applied to probably 35 plus companies. I
Wow.
think I applied for everything I could find, and I ended up with 2 offers at the end of that process. I had an offer from GSK and an offer from the BBC. I'd start with looking at who you know, who your parents know, who your friends know even. Trying to use your network is the easiest thing to get more experience. There's loads of events that you can find for different careers, for people who want to get experience. Sign up to events, sign up to talks about specific topics that you're interested in. And that way you can meet like-minded people. Just put yourself out there to find opportunities rather than waiting to come to you.
Hello and welcome back to Pathways to Success, the show where we explore the journeys, decisions and lessons that shape successful careers. Today, I'm joined by Arun, a software engineer at the BBC. He also has roots to the Open University and impressive career in tech. I'm hoping that he'll bring his insights into how ambition, lifelong learning and practical experience come together to build a fulfilling and professional career. So Arun, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
To start us off, could you introduce yourself and tell our listeners a bit about who is Arun?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Arun. I went to Herschel Grammar as a student and met Mr. Abdul then. Yeah, so from sixth form, I decided not to go to university afterwards and went through the path of doing a degree apprenticeship. And from there, my degree apprenticeship was with the BBC. And that gave me a route into the company and into a permanent role where I'm working now as a software engineer.
That's fantastic because I know you took the degree apprenticeship route, and this is one of the reasons why I want to delve into what degree apprenticeship are all about and the rest of it as well. But we'll come to that in a bit. What did you want to be when you were younger?
So when I was younger, I wanted to be a variety of things. I used to change it all the time, but initially I always thought about medicine and being a surgeon. And again, like I said, that changed quite a lot, especially once I started picking certain subjects and liking them better. I ended up liking maths and economics a lot more than the sciences side of things. And that kind of steered me away from that as well.
I think a lot of students listening will be able to relate to you on that because a lot of people who are kind of in a similar boat to you in terms of your background wise, they would probably have considered medicine at some point.
Yeah.
And it's quite normal in that sense because from being the South Asian background and in the Asian background in general, I think parents do have that influence whereby they will come and suggest healthcare related careers in general. And obviously at young age, everyone has all this variety of ideas and it changes with growth and time. And once you start realizing what your strengths are, you do kind of delve into different paths and come out of it. And then you kind of start thinking differently as you grow older. So we'll kind of think about how your career decision changed as well and how it's shaped over time. Brilliant. So let's talk about your early school experience. So for example, what interests and what kind of things did you enjoy whilst you were at school?
Yeah. So what I liked the most was projects at school. So where you are actually building something, that's what interested me the most. So from my background, my dad was a surveyor and he was always in construction as long as I knew when I was younger. And I was always interested in building things from there, I think. So subjects like wood tech, like resistant materials, building things in that way always interested me. And then through the tech side, I think this is where software engineering really came from for me, where I did computer science at GCSE. So it's another way of building things. And yeah, my interests started to lie there, I think.
Would you say doing computer science at GCSE level kind of helped in decision making for example, pursuing a career eventually in software engineering? Would you say that helped in the starting point?
Yeah, I definitely would say that. Interestingly enough, I didn't then do it for A levels. I kind of decided I wanted to go as broad as possible with my subjects to kind of maximize my opportunities. And again, when I say broad, I mean not really again on the sciences side of things. So I did maths, geography, and economics. And I thought that'd give me quite a broad range to then choose from when it came to subjects for university at the time.
Okay, so when you pick those subjects for A levels, because a lot of people who are now currently doing their GCSEs in year 11, let's say, they're going to need to start making a decision for themselves next year. So, what did you kind of find out about other routes available other than A levels at the time, or did you just know about A levels?
So at that time, I still wasn't really aware of other opportunities. I was just thinking of for university courses, what kinds of things I was roughly interested in and just picked it from that perspective. But obviously now the awareness is a lot higher about other opportunities other than university.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people, like when they go to an academic school, they don't, not that they don't know, but like they might not be aware of other opportunities because they don't research about it enough, for instance. But obviously, after finishing GCSEs, you have options to do BTECs or any sort of
Mhm.
vocational courses that are available. Then you have obviously your A levels, and then you have now things like T levels. And within that, you have your like low, like entry level apprenticeships as well. And I think, going back, I was just one person comes to mind, a friend of mine who, after finishing GCSEs, he wasn't sure what he wanted to do. So obviously, a lot of us ended up doing A levels, but he ended up doing a BTECs in a college, and because he preferred the coursework elements and didn't like the exams and stuff. And then he ended up actually pursuing a degree in the end. And a lot of people didn't know you could do that. So they thought, oh, you can't do a degree unless you do A levels, because a lot of the
Yeah.
B techs actually equivalent to a certain number of A levels, for instance. And many people will be unaware of this actually. And so obviously I think it's really important that people at this position of going into A levels and or the kind of post 16 education life, they should research into all the different pathways. Yes, many people will be academic and they'll probably end up doing A levels, but then you should also keep your options open if you're somebody who's not maybe so academic and you prefer to do things hands-on or a bit more coursework related or learn on the job or that kind of thing. And I think it's important to explore the options. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I had a friend of mine who actually did BTEC as well,
Mm,
I think in business studies, and he did an additional A level on top of that. And that gave him enough qualifications to get into uni. And he went to Nottingham University.
hmm.
And now he's a HR manager for DHL. So
Amazing.
BTECs are definitely good for people who prefer something else and a different
Mm,
style
hmm.
to get the same level of qualification.
Definitely. I think it's like kind of going back to what you said. Like my friend that did that, he ended up going to City University and did,
Mhm.
can't remember what he did there, but he ended up doing something with software engineering eventually, like what you're doing now. But I remember somebody else who also did A levels at the time, but didn't do as well as him at the end. So he was actually worse off, the person who did A levels, because he didn't do as well in the end, whereas he
Yeah.
did his BTECs and actually doing better and pursued the career in that pathway. And again, it just goes to show a lot of people are none the wiser. That just doing BTEC does not restrict your progression in life in the future. And in fact, people go on to do some amazing stuff. Even, like your friend who's become manager at DHL, for instance, which is fantastic to hear. But yeah, that's fantastic. So now that you've done your A levels, what did you have in mind after A levels? Like I know you obviously ended up going into a degree apprenticeship. So what did you do during your A levels? What research did you carry out for you to end up deciding to do a degree apprenticeship?
So I'd say for year 12, I was still unaware of these other opportunities. So I just carried on as normal, thinking about university, thinking about what courses to specifically apply for at various universities. And I started narrowing down my list. And it was only during year 13 where I found out about degree apprenticeships. And from there, I applied to a handful, maybe 3 or 4. And I guess that was a mixture of two things. One being the fact that I was not aware of many of the opportunities. I only saw a few and didn't really have the time to research or thought about it enough to research it. And yeah, again, there weren't as many opportunities as there are now. So I just saw that as like maybe a backup option to university at the time. So I applied to those. And for one of them, which was with IBM, I got through. I did an interview and then I was successful with that one. And they then placed me into a matching pool. And during that time, this was just before doing my A levels. So, like the exams, I mean. So, I then did the exams. And during that summer of waiting for my results, I was still in this matching pool for IBM. And so I was kind of conflicted about what to do when it came to results day. So, when it came to results day, I then had my option to go to university and accept my place, or I could try and get it deferred and then kind of think about this degree apprenticeship thing a bit more. And what ended up happening was I called the university asking for a deferred place, which would then give me a place for the following year. And they rejected that. They said that I would have to start that year. So I then kind of thought about it a lot with my family. And my dad was actually really supportive of degree apprenticeships as well. So he kind of thought it might be a good idea if I kind of wait around for IBM and at the same time apply to other degree apprenticeships for the following year. And that's what I ended up doing. I then took a gap year and didn't take the university place. And instead, I reapplied for university through UCAS, got a statement through the school as well, like a reference. And yeah, I spent my gap year then applying for degree apprenticeships.
Okay. So two things comes to mind here, because obviously I think it's a really difficult time in year 12 and then applying for stuff, finding out more information. Like you said, it was quite
Hmm.
challenging to even research about what options are available to you. So
Yeah.
in terms of just to kind of start off with the apprenticeship route itself, how was the process like for applying for example, IBM at the time? What kind of rigorous process did you have to face? Because I know a lot of people have to go through so many stages. So can you talk us through what you had to go through?
Yeah, it was definitely challenging. I think even for just being in a gap year where there wasn't as much pressure, it was still challenging at that time. So to do that during school as well is quite difficult. So the way it kind of starts off is you have the first stage, which is usually you send your CV across and maybe you answer some questions on an application. And then after that stage, you then do some tests, and those are like personality tests or they're technical tests, depending on the course you've applied for. And following that, you then have multiple interviews, again, depending on the company. But what I experienced was often two stages of interviews. So one might be where you record yourself answering questions and you have to upload that. And the other one is after it's an in person or a remote call interview.
Yeah. Okay. So that's quite full on, isn't it? Because you've got to do so many different stages, and at that age as well, you're
Yeah.
still really young, and being able to go into this profession, like it's like applying for a job. So you have to go
Hmm.
through so many stages, and you have to answer all these really difficult questions and really know the company inside out because they really want to find out whether you're really serious about it. And it's highly competitive. There's so many people applying for it, so you have to really be good to be able to get one.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of obviously you did CT for GCSEs, but then chose not to do that for A levels. So
Hmm.
when did you first realize you wanted to work in the software engineering world?
Well, even from the university courses I applied to a bit of a range of ones as well, but they were all themed around computer science or data science. I quite like thinking analytically and using data in different ways with software, whether that's like visualizations or to figure things out. Kind of made that decision based on how much I liked economics and maths, really. I just liked dealing with statistics a lot as well. And that's kind of why I went through that route and chose that kind of subject area.
Yeah. So, you mentioned about you applying to university and requested for a deferred entry. What
Hmm.
did you apply for? And was it specifically?
So, yeah, that's actually an interesting story. So, originally, I applied for a data science degree course at Nottingham Uni. And during that year, they basically cancelled the course. Uh,
Really? Wow.
yeah, I think maybe they didn't get enough
Numbers.
applications to do the course, or I wasn't really sure, but they ended up cancelling the course completely and they put me on to the computer science course for my application. It was kind of an automatic process that they did. And then that took one of my choices, computer science at Nottingham University.
That would have thrown you off, isn't it? Because that's like so
Yeah.
unexpected. And it's like, what?
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah. It's definitely like unfamiliar for that to happen.
100%. I mean, a lot of people would be like, "What's going on here? And what do I do?" kind of thing. It'd be
Yeah.
difficult. Okay, so now that obviously you ended up doing your degree apprenticeship. So talk us through how you ended up landing where did you end up doing it, and how that kind of worked out for you.
Yeah, so like I said, I applied to a few during school time, and then following that in my gap year, I spent a lot of my time in that gap year applying to essentially every single degree apprenticeship I could find.
Yeah,
Some great advice that I got from my dad as well was to just apply for anything, even just to get the experience. Because interview experience, like you said, for someone who's young, you don't really have that. And you might be a great candidate for something, but you'll mess up the interview just because you're not experienced at them, or so things can throw you off. And to kind of maximize your kind of, well, how would I say that? But you want to give yourself the best chance of getting the job that you want. And experience is the best teacher to do that.
Mm,
So failing at an application for a degree apprenticeship or for any job is like such a great teacher.
absolutely.
And I used that quite a lot. Yeah, like I said, I applied to probably 35 plus companies. I think I applied for everything I could find, and I ended up with two offers at the end of that process.
Hmm.
I had an offer from GSK and an offer from the BBC. And the offer from GSK was for a level 4 apprenticeship in data science. The offer from the BBC was a level 6 degree apprenticeship in software engineering. And obviously, to me, it was easy to decide out of those which was the best route for me.
Yeah.
But again, some people might be different and they might prefer to come in at a lower level and work their way up from there, which I had the option to do at GSK, but I preferred to kind of get ahead and get to degree level as soon as I could.
Mm, yeah, amazing. I think that's I mean that I personally think that's probably a that's something that's just first to highlight actually applying for 35 applications and then getting two offers in the end. That just goes to show how difficult it is, first of all.
Yeah.
So people, like I have people currently, they'll be like, oh, I've applied for like a couple of apprenticeships, but I haven't heard back from
Mhm.
them. But that just goes to show you can't just, apply for one or two and expect to like make it happen kind of thing. You have to apply to as many as you can. And you
Yeah.
have to be dedicated, like you said. And the other thing I want to kind of highlight what you said as well is, some of the things when it don't go your way or like it kind of doesn't happen for you, but it's a life lesson for everyone to learn from. And, like let's say you go into an interview and it hasn't gone well, or, you didn't end up, you didn't end up getting it, but the kind of what you become one wiser now because you've just learned from your how you could approach next time, for example, another interview. So anybody who's listening and it hasn't gone your way, just remember that it's not the end of the world because you'll have other opportunities. And as Aaron mentioned as well, like the degree apprenticeship world has grown significantly since back then as well, and there's so much more opportunities available now. So you shouldn't just give up after the first hurdle that you face. Just keep going if you really want to do it. Keep applying for the next ones, and definitely apply more than a few because you just need to know. You just need to know there's so many people applying for it. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. One of the things you also mentioned, which was quite nice to hear, is that your dad was very supportive of your decision making, and he also gave you advice on what's kind of good for you as well.
Mhm.
So I kind of wanted to know, like, what were some of the defining moments or experiences that confirmed that this was the right path for you in the end?
I would say you come across certain jobs that you apply for. And for me, there were a few specific ones and specific companies that I really thought like I'd love to work there and I'd love to do what was involved in that degree apprenticeship scheme. And just knowing that those opportunities were there, that really piqued my interest. I think that's what really got me into it was kind of seeing what you can be capable of doing at such an early age. And like I said, going back to the beginning of the conversation, I was always interested in building things and working on projects. And I think that's where my strengths lie rather than studying for exams. And I don't think that's for me. So that's what really got me into that. And so I wouldn't say there were specific defining moments, but it was more so, um, I think you just come across certain opportunities and you think, that's where I see myself, or that's what I want to see myself doing.
Like a gut feeling almost, like you get.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Okay. So like, okay, fine. So like, for instance, in terms of, let's say, obviously you mentioned about you're a hands-on person and you didn't enjoy exams or what have you, but you did very
Mhm.
well for your A levels. So let's talk about what you did because it clearly, you did things that were right and you did do really well in the end. So talk us through what you did during your A levels that really helped you to succeed during your time, for year 12 and 13.
Yeah, sure. During my A levels, so we went through a bit of a difficult period for one of my subjects, economics, where we didn't have our main teacher for, I think, maybe a few months before the exam. And so we weren't able to prepare for one of the papers properly. So I would say, I mean, this applies to all three of the subjects I did, but constantly practicing exams, like exam papers, past papers, that was the best thing to do for me. And again, some things work better for others, but I would always say that's the best thing to do, is to constantly do exam papers over and over again. A lot of the time, obviously everyone knows the questions can repeat themselves into the ones that you're doing at the time when you sit it. And knowing how to answer certain types of questions, they word them in similar ways. You know how to like tackle those, if that makes sense, and break down what to do for those questions. So for my subjects, geography was the only one where I did a form of coursework that applied to my grade. And so for that, I would say I made quite a few versions of my document that I did for that. And what I would say is just probably with the technical advice is just to keep saving multiple versions of files and like save them in different locations. There was a couple of people who just lost all their work at some point and had to start again. So dealing with those kinds of things is very difficult at that time. And again, with versioning of coursework, you might come back and think, oh, something I've deleted, I actually might need now. Or you liked the way you wrote a certain section before and now you've deleted it, so you can't find that bit. If you have different versions of the coursework, then you can always go back to those.
Yeah, I think definitely saving on like a cloud system, working off of it is much better than doing it on like a normal Word document or something. Because if your computer shuts down or something happens, you lost all your work, and it happens to
Yeah.
even professionals in the real world, where
Mhm.
they kind of working on something like really important, and all of a sudden it's just I don't know, something happens and they lose all their work. But that's really actually helpful, and I think it gives some practical advice there that people can use during their time, while they're studying A levels. Now let's go into your kind of degree apprenticeships now with BBC.
Mhm.
How did you? What was it like? So in terms of working and obviously studying at the same time.
So initially, it was it definitely took some adjusting. I had just come off the back of doing a gap year where I was working for that whole time. So getting back into studying, that was a bit difficult for me initially. But again, the background in maths helped quite a lot for the degree. What they do is they kind of have quite a good support structure as well. So we had someone we spoke to from the university, and we had an apprenticeship manager at the company as well. So that support was already quite good. And that's on top of having a line manager for the position that you're placed in the company as well. So you're kind of working with three managers, if that makes sense. You've got one from the university, one from your apprenticeship cohort in the company, and then one who's covering your work related pieces. So yeah, like I said, it took some adjusting, but doing them at the same time, studying and working, it's definitely not as difficult as it's kind of made out to be, I feel like, especially for this kind of scheme, because they kind of start you off slowly and slowly you get integrated into the team and working in a certain way. And then the studying slowly ramps up as well in terms of the difficulty. So you kind of get to a stage where you know what you're doing and you know how to prioritize things.
Mm, yeah. So in terms of actually, because obviously in your view, what are the biggest benefits of combining real world work experience with academic learning?
Yeah, I mean, it's invaluable. I don't think you can get the same experience just at university unless you were doing constant projects, which you'd have to be highly motivated to do at university.
Mm,
When you've got someone who's your manager and you've got colleagues that rely on you, it's a lot easier to be in that zone. And again, applying what I was doing at work to my studies in terms of the technical side of things was really important. We had a lot of projects that we did for university, and what ended up happening was the stuff I was doing at uni ended up being quite a dumbed down version of what I was doing at work. So that made it a lot easier to get things done.
okay. So in terms of like obviously you mentioned about some of the skills that you might not get if you're going to university, for instance. Did you feel like you missed out on anything for not going to university, like the normal route, traditional route?
What I would say is I would say no for sure. I think some people might really like the experience of living outside of home, but for that, I would say you can just move out and rent somewhere. You can find places where students are living as well, and you count as a student as a degree apprenticeship. So I'm not sure how that works, but I think for a lot of student accommodation, you can apply there as well if it's open to all students. But for my experience, I lived at home and I still feel like I didn't miss anything. I got to go and travel to different universities where my friends were and stay with them and experience things with them. And so, yeah, I never really missed out on anything.
That is a good point. I think because a lot of people that end up doing, let's say, a degree apprenticeship or apprenticeship in general, any sort of level, you
Hmm.
can still, go out and do things with your friends like you would have done, for example, if you're at uni. So it doesn't, a lot of people say that, oh, you miss out on the university life, living out, and like you said, things like, I don't know, partying, whatever it may be, right? But then, like, those things can come with it. It doesn't make also, the other thing is, like, so when you're doing your degree apprenticeship, were you the only one, or were the others doing the same degree apprenticeship as you?
So in my group, I had a cohort of 6 people.
Okay.
So there were 6 of us who joined at the same time doing the same scheme. I think now in our company, that number has risen to about 20, 25.
Wow. That's
And so there's
significantly
a
grown.
lot more people per year group now. Obviously, the competition has grown as well with more people being aware of them. But I would say across all companies, the spaces have also grown. So it's kind of almost balanced out in that way. But yeah, we joined, there were 6 of us who joined, and yeah, we stayed connected through our scheme. And sometimes we would set up like study sessions together as well, or we just bounce questions off of each other on our university work. Um, and we had group calls that were organized with our apprenticeship manager and the university liaison as well. And that was just to check everyone's progress, share ideas of ways of working and ways of studying.
Okay. So, can you tell us like how the actual apprenticeship work? Like, how many days were you having to do studying for university and working, or how was yours kind of balanced out?
Yeah, so some companies or some schemes, they prefer to do it in blocks of time. So I know that we joined as a cohort of 6, and there was another group based in Scotland. And sometimes in bigger organized calls, we would talk to them as well. And the way theirs was organized was they would do university for a block of maybe 4 weeks, and then they would go back to working as usual. And then they'd have another block, and that would kind of serve as their time for university work. For us, we did it so we had 2 days every week that were used primarily for university work, and the other 3 days were for working in our team. And so on those university days, we would study, or we would have, I wouldn't say lectures, but they were calls that were organized by the university to go through topics and then go through how to answer the exams we had at the end of each module. So yeah, we did it in that system where it was split during the working week.
Okay. So, yeah, so that's good to know that obviously every scheme is probably different, but yours was a bit kind of 2 days, and then you had that sort of system to support you with giving you advice on how to prepare for your exams and stuff, which is good to hear. So obviously going now that we've talked about apprenticeships, the degree apprenticeships and university, I know many young professionals today are navigating those choices between university, apprenticeships and other routes as well. What advice would you give them since you've been through this now?
So I think on it depends on how you learn, and what you're sure about doing in the future for your career. I think if you haven't really figured it out yet, it might be best for you to go to university and still explore things. But even to that extent, I would say you could still do a degree apprenticeship, get through everything, and then decide to change to something else. What can often happen is if you get your foot in the door at a big company through a degree apprenticeship, you can always make horizontal switches for a job, and you can explore other opportunities through different schemes that companies offer. So at the BBC, we have a few different schemes where you can get experience in completely different sides of the company. So I would say it is a tough decision to make, but I would definitely say I wouldn't regret doing a degree apprenticeship, and I would always think that's the best opportunity to go for.
Yeah. I think it's also the kind of that space is also changing now, because you know how you mentioned earlier on in the conversation about how a lot of people applied for university and then this was like a backup, but it's almost like
Mhm.
turned around now. The degree apprenticeship is like the main route, and then the university is like a backup if it doesn't work out. Because obviously, ultimately, there's no brainer really. If you're going to do a degree apprenticeship where you're being paid on the job, you're getting your degree paid for, you're earning, you're learning on the job, and all
Mhm.
of those skills you're going to end up coming out of the 3 year or however long your degree apprenticeship is with the more experience than somebody who's at university than, ever. And then you're going to be in a much better position to actually, you're probably already secured a job because you're most likely to continue with that as you have.
Yeah.
And then somebody coming out after doing a computer science, let's say, at an university, they're going to come out as a fresh grad who has no experience almost potentially. Maybe they do because they did some work experience alongside it. But majority of people will be in the same boat as not having much experience and then now having to look for a job, and then they go for applications and they request for, what experience you have. And then it's like a catch-22. You don't, they don't want to give you a job to get experience, and you can't, it's like,
Yeah.
it's really difficult, isn't it? So I think in some people's, if you're in a situation kind of deciding, I would personally suggest right now, if your kind of pathway can be done through a degree apprenticeship route, like it doesn't make sense to do a degree in it. So you're better off attempting to apply for it and going through the process and see if you can secure it. And if it doesn't work out, then maybe, apply for a university where you can do it through that route instead. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And I would say even throughout school and then getting to that stage of whether you have a degree apprenticeship or just a degree, for any form of application process, the best advice I can give is you have to think what makes you different and what separates you from other people. And if that's experience in something, like working experience, which you would get through a degree apprenticeship, then to someone who's hiring, they're obviously going to pick the person with the experience most of the time. And again, like I said, throughout school application processes and when you're going up to that stage, you have to think about what sets you apart from other people and what can give you a leg up. And these kind of schemes are there to do that.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%. Obviously, going straight into a degree apprenticeship after finishing A levels, that's such a big transition itself, especially when you're having to work with people of different ages, and you're still really young. I would say, like, it's really hard, isn't it? Because you just finished your A levels and having to go into the real world of work. It's not easy. So were there any challenges you faced early in your career, and how did you navigate them?
So again, something that benefited me was taking that gap year, actually, because during that time I was then working during my gap year, and so I was able to get that experience of working with a different age group and collaborating with different people other than students of my own age. And that gave me really good experience for then getting the scheme and then also finding that adjustment process okay, working with other people. So if that's something that you lack as a person, I would say doing a gap year is definitely okay to do that and get that experience.
Yeah, I think a lot of people actually look down on gap years, and every single time I have a conversation about this with parents, especially, they're just really against it. What advice would you give to someone currently who's trying to explain to their parents or carers at home of taking a gap year? Like, what some of the things would you say? Like you mentioned already, during that time working, you develop on skills that you'd never do elsewhere. You mingle and work with people of different age and backgrounds, and so you get to learn another side to you that you wouldn't have whilst being at school. So somebody who's having to explain that to their parents, what would you say to them?
I would say you kind of need to reframe the way they're thinking in terms of if you do a gap year, they're thinking maybe you're losing a year in terms of getting into your career. But I would say if you haven't quite figured things out and you kind of pick something or you pick a route to go down, and then you're having in the future to go back and switch to something else, then you might have wasted even more years rather than just taking 1 year to figure things out for yourself.
I think sometimes taking a step back is probably going to accelerate you in many ways than you wouldn't have thought of just jumping into something without even thinking about it. So yeah, definitely, I think reframing it to your parents or carers at home is really important, because they ultimately want you to kind of just carry on with your life and develop in your own kind of a world. And so they want the best for you ultimately, but sometimes they might not understand that, this is an opportunity for you to learn other skills as well. So just rephrasing and reframing that, I think, is definitely really important, so that they can actually, and I think it's important to be transparent in it as well, because a lot of people, they just kind of say, oh, I won't tell them and I'll just do this anyway. And it's just wrong to do that, because you're going to end up, they're going to eventually have to speak to them about it, and they're going to find out one way or another. So just be transparent and have an open conversation, and actually just kind of put everything on the table so that you can both discuss it and then go with that really, as opposed to just trying to hide away, that kind of thing. Amazing. So, you mentioned about skills that you benefited during your, your gap year. So what would you say about some skills or habits or mindsets, to be honest, you think are most valuable for someone hoping to follow your similar pathway?
Well, I think we spoke about before with how many applications it takes sometimes to get these schemes. I'd say like persevering through that is a really useful thing to have. And it's a useful thing to learn during this period of your life, because once you then get started in your career, it is difficult to break habits of ways of working and how you get past difficult situations. To develop those skills at an early age is really important, I think. So, yeah, I would say perseverance, adaptability as well is a huge thing, because, like, for me, I found schemes that I liked, thought it was the way I was going to go for my career, and started thinking ahead. It turns out I didn't get those opportunities, and then I had to kind of adapt to something else. Even for my CV alone, you have to adjust these kinds of things to tailor it to certain jobs, whether that's, yeah, your CV or your application that you've written up. So you've got to adapt to that as well. And I would probably say organizational skills is really important as well. If you decide to try and apply for these schemes while you're studying at school, you need to be able to organize your time to apply for those and do all of the application processes and stages, as well as studying for your A levels or BTECs, wherever you're doing. So you kind of need to organize your time really well for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you actually spot on with some of the skills you mentioned. Going back to like actually one more thing is regarding transferable skills as well. Again, is a lot of young people when they're younger, like you might remember this when you were in school. You get put into groups to work with people who might not be your friends in your class, or maybe having to work with people you don't like even. What advice would you give to them? What's it like in the real world now that you've been working in the world of work now? What advice would you give to those people who are quick to say, "Oh, no, no, I don't want to work in these groups"? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you do definitely have to get used to it. You do come across people that you have to work with, and maybe you don't like them, but you do have to just get on with it sometimes. And in a lot of situations, there's nothing you can do about it. The decisions almost all the time is made for you. So I would say learning to deal with that and collaborate with people who you might not necessarily like. Yeah, you have to develop that skill. I'd say also sometimes the people you might not like, they might be the best people for that specific role as well that you're doing. So learning to work with those kinds of people you don't like may actually benefit you in your career. And yeah, I would say more often than not, you come across people who you can learn from as well. And again, you might not necessarily like them or get on with them, but you should always try and see the benefit to it and try and learn something from them as well.
I think even in that situation, they might push you in a direction or get something out of you that you may not have
Yeah.
done if you were just with your friends. Because sometimes when you're with your friends, you're too comfortable that you don't maximize your mindset skills and things like that you have. And it's good to work with people, different people, because you ultimately will learn to teamwork. These are skills which are fundamental to the real world of work. And the reason I asked you this question is because actually recently I had a student who, I do these kind of careers events where I put them into groups of like roughly usually 6 or 7,
Mhm.
and or 6, 7. I'm sorry, but but like 6 people normally, and they tend to come back to me and be like, "Oh, I don't want to work in those groups. Can you put me in a different group?" So I said to this individual, I was like, "Oh, what are you going to do in the world of work when you get there and you have to work with people in a team where you might not, get along with them, or they might not share those same worldview as you, or you might not have the same interests as them?" You know what they said to me? "Oh, just leave that job." Like they're so deluded about what the real world is like. Like it's that simple that you're just gonna literally just leave your job and do something else or go somewhere else because it's that easy. It's just
Yeah.
crazy. Like I think it's just people are, when you're young, you don't think, and it's one of those things really. But yeah, no, fantastic. So that's really helpful too. You've given some really good advice there, I think, to people. Looking back now, it's been obviously you've done so well in and I just want to congratulate you on everything you've achieved so far. It's not easy. So
Thank
really
you.
well done to you. But in terms of looking back now, what one advice would you give to yourself, like going back to your younger self?
I would say to my younger self, I'd probably say don't worry so much. I guess worrying can be a good thing if you're worrying about the right things and what's important. But I think when I was a lot younger, I used to worry about things too much and let it get to me. And think even with things at school, like exams or grades not going so well, you can always improve. And yeah, I think it's best not to let things get to you in that way, and things can work themselves out. And again, I would always say that people have different things they're good at, and there's different routes to accommodate for that into your career. So yeah, you've got to find what your kind of passion is and what your route to get there is as well.
Amazing. That's great. And obviously you've been working at the BBC now for a while. Where
Mhm.
do you see your career going in the next, let's say, 5 years?
Funnily enough, I've been thinking about this recently because I'm thinking about what I should do next. I think I'm always exploring that as well. I don't really have that completely set in stone, but one of the things I'm looking into potentially is solutions architecture, following on from software engineering. Because, like we touched on, I'm interested in crafting things and building things. So, in that sense, I quite like the idea of kind of building the structure behind a system and how the different components interact. So, I think moving forward, that's what I might move on to next.
Brilliant. Yeah, that sounds exciting actually. In terms of the world of tech, obviously it's always ever changing. What excites you the most about the future of tech?
I would say trying not to use something that's AI related.
Yeah.
Feel like it's too easy of an answer. But I would say, to be honest, I don't know.
No, that's fair enough. No, I think the AI side is really exciting because it's almost dangerous now because of the things it's doing, and so
Yeah.
I think it's just how I would say in the last 5 years, it's just I don't know, it's like the use of social media has increased significantly, and there are these
Hmm.
new jobs that have come about like content creation, all this stuff like never existed, 5, 6 years ago that are now becoming really, really popular, and stuff like that is we just don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 years, let alone 5 years, the next couple of years, it's going to be mental. No, I like the tech stuff, but it's also scary at the same time, because I know with Elon Musk with his that thing we put, that I forgot what it's called now, but kind of monitors your brain or something. And I don't know, I forgot.
Neuralink.
Yeah, no, that's the one. That's just I don't know. It's just becoming too much now, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say maybe what excites me more is probably in robotics.
Hmm.
I find that side of things exciting. I think um, technology that kind of can't be used against people is probably
Mm,
uh, the most exciting stuff for me, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, I think robotics is really interesting now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think recently I came across, I think there are universities now doing courses where they're doing computer science with AI, and it's becoming
Hmm.
really big now as well. So yeah, that's going to be big, I think, obviously, regardless going forward. But yeah, that's fantastic. So also in terms of somebody who's currently, thinking about computer science maybe, or something software engineering related or data science, what would you say to them about work experience? How can they gain work experience? What's the best way to go around that?
I'd say the easiest route is use your network. That's where I would start. I'd start with looking at who you know, who your parents know, who your friends know, even. Trying to use your network is probably the easiest thing to get more experience in something. And then following from that, if you don't really have a network built yet, the next stage is to do that. I would say build a network, start interacting with loads of people, whether that's online or in person. There's loads of events that you can find for different careers, for people who want to get experience in different careers. So I'd say to sign up to events, sign up to talks about specific topics that you're interested in. And that way you can meet like minded people as well. And you can find opportunities through them as well. And what I'd also say is just email people, just email companies, just put yourself out there to find opportunities rather than waiting
Yeah.
for it to come to you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things like it goes back to exactly what you said at the beginning. You have to be dedicated, you have to be determined, and you have to persevere because if you don't do those things, someone else will. And then, if you don't put
Yeah.
yourself out there and you start taking active approaches to things, nothing's going to come to you that easy. I think there are some people who kind of have been spoon fed over their life so far. They just think everything's going to be given to them, what's going to put on the table for them. It's not, the real world is not like that. You have to really, be proactive in researching and looking at placements. And if you really want to do work experience, reach out to people, like you said, email them, even phone them, or even some cases walk into a business if they're local to you and ask them in person because there's nothing wrong with that. And if the worst thing they can say is no. Do you know what I mean? At least you
Mhm.
tried.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Cool, wicked. That's fantastic, Arun. Let's go. Just before we end there, in terms of your hobbies, what do you do then to kind of keep yourself busy outside of work? Because I know you mentioned about climb in the past, and was it climb? I forgot what it was now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
climbing.
So what do you do like to keep yourself active or kind of keep yourself doing things that you enjoy?
Yeah, so climbing I haven't done for a while, but that was a really fun thing to do. There's a couple that are quite local, where you can just go there with your friends and just figure out how to climb different difficulties of a wall. So that was really fun. And yeah, at the moment I play football once a week and badminton once a week as well. So yeah, I'd say obviously it's important to stay fit, also to do things that are creative, especially if your job is not very creative. It's important to keep that side of your brain active, I would say, doing things creative. Yeah, and I'd say on top of that, I'm also very interested in photography. I love photography. I love traveling as well. And so one of the main things I like to do is go abroad to take pictures of things, explore different areas of the world. I like experiencing different cultures.
100%.
And me and my friends just got back from a trip to Thailand as well. So that was really fun. And trying different cuisines as well. That's really fun.
Yeah, no, I'm 100%. I agree with you on that. I really enjoy traveling as well. I feel like it enriches you so much about different people's cultures, the food and
Yeah.
music and fashion. All of that stuff is just so fascinating because, in this world, we have so many different kind of cultures and, behaviors and things like that, which we don't actually understand unless we are in it. And that's why we have so
Mhm.
many ignorant people in this world. But I think by traveling, it
Yeah.
makes you such a more well-rounded person. But I'm definitely I do want to see you guys' vlog or your video soon. So I'm looking forward to that because I want to know what you guys got up to in Thailand. But that's for another day. But fantastic. Now that's really helpful, Aaron. Thank you so much for being here. It's been
Thank
a
you, guys.
pleasure having you on Pathways to Success. Your journey from education through to impactful work in tech is truly inspiring. And I just want to say you've shared valuable real world advice for listeners considering their own paths into software engineering and professional life in the future. And to our audience, I just want to say thank you for listening. If you are inspired by Aaron's story, take a moment today to reflect on your own goals and what steps you can take next. And don't think you have to get it all figured out. Start researching, and don't forget to obviously if you want to learn more about the software engineering, look into the different courses that are available at university, and then also the different apprenticeship routes are available to doing it as well. And that being said, don't forget to obviously like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. And if you know somebody who might benefit from this, share it with them. And until next time, I'll just say keep learning, keep growing, and keep forging your own paths. Thank you very much for listening. And Aaron, again, thank you very much.
Thank you.